Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping right in today with a pretty stark quote from scientist John Holdren.
Yeah, he said the ongoing disruption of the Earth's climate by man-made greenhouse gases is already well beyond dangerous and is careening toward completely unmanageable.
Completely unmanageable. That's quite the starting point.
It really is. And look, this deep dive today, it isn't just about, the latest policy proposal. It's digging into what our sources are calling a necessary transformation.
A transformation of what, exactly?
Well, everything. Governance, how we see the world, even our psychology, really.
Yeah.
It's about navigating what they term the long emergency.
Okay, the long emergency. And underlying all this is this idea of shared vulnerability, right? Like we're all connected.
Precisely. Biologist Edward O. Wilson put it really well, saying we're all stitched to a common fabric of life, but right now, we're living dangerously. He calls it the bottleneck.
The bottleneck. And it seems like we're pretty good at creating our own dangers these days.
Astonishingly good, unfortunately. The sources point to, three major self-inflicted existential risks.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first, the one we've lived with for decades, nuclear annihilation.
Yeah.
Second, the topic for today, ecological degradation, climate change being a huge part of that.
And a third.
This one's maybe a bit newer feeling. Eviction by our own technologies, things that can self-replicate. Bill Joy, the computer scientist, raised serious alarms about this years ago.
Wow. Okay, nuclear war, ecological collapse, rogue AI. It sounds incredibly bleak. Is there, an upside here?
Well, the sources do propose this concept called millennial hope. It's not blind optimism, mind you.
Right.
It's the idea that facing this crisis head-on, this sort of trial by fire, it could leave us chastened but improved.
Chastened but improved. So our mission today is to really unpack the scale of this crisis, which, let's be honest, seems like a predictable result of how we set things up and explore what that improvement might actually look like.
Exactly. But to find that hope, you first have to stare unflinchingly at the scale of the problem, the commitment we've already made.
Okay, let's talk numbers. Committed warming. Where are we right now?
Right now, the planet's already warmed about 0.8 degrees Celsius compared to, before the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, 0.8 C.
But here's the kicker, the part you really need to get.
Yeah.
Even if, magically, all greenhouse gas emissions stopped this second, worldwide,
Yeah.
we're already locked in, committed to another 0.5 to 1.0 degrees Celsius of warming on top of that.
Wait, so just based on what's already in the atmosphere?
Exactly. So we're essentially guaranteed to hit or probably blow past that 2 degrees C threshold scientists keep warning about, the one that's considered, really dangerous.
That doesn't make sense. How can warming be guaranteed if we stop emitting now?
That's the crucial piece, the time lag. It's physics.
Okay, explain the lag. Because the heat waves, the droughts, the big storms we see now, aren't they from emissions happening now?
Nope, not primarily. What you're seeing today, the weather extremes, the melting ice, that's largely the result of fuels we burned roughly 3 decades ago.
30 years ago, seriously.
Seriously. The climate system has inertia. Think of it like turning a huge ship. It takes time to respond. There's about a 30-year delay between pumping CO2 into the air and feeling its full warming effect.
So the worst is all rebaked in from stuff we did in the 90s or even earlier.
Pretty much, which makes what the scientist Wallace Broecker said feel, deeply unsettling. He called the climate system an angry beast, and we are poking it with sticks.
And the beast is already angry, the consequence is already scheduled, you're saying, so give it to us straight. What are we definitely facing no matter what?
Okay, well, based on that committed warming, we're looking at irreversible shifts. Traditional northern winters, they'll become a thing of the past, mostly a memory.
Okay, what else?
Eventual flooding of major coastal cities. Think New Orleans, Miami, Baltimore. They're on borrowed time in their current form.
Borrowed time.
We'll see ecosystems change dramatically, like Appalachian forests, probably replaced by scrubland.
Wow.
And maybe one of the most worrying forecasts comes from the Consultative Group on Agricultural Research. They suggest the U.S. Midwest, America's breadbasket, could become unsuitable for farming by 2050.
Unsuitable for farming. The Midwest.
Yeah. Imagine the impact on food prices globally. Sharp, steep increases.
That's staggering. A complete reshaping of the map and our food supply. So if the science is this clear, this alarming, why isn't there mass panic? Why aren't people demanding radical change?
That's the psychological barrier.
Yeah.
The sources call it the consensus trance.
Consensus trance.
Yeah, it's like a collective denial almost. People believe, or want to believe, that small tweaks, minor adjustments will be enough. It lets them stay sort of comfortably unaware of the real scope and, crucially, the duration of this destabilization.
They want to fix the problem without actually changing the underlying way we live, the consumer society part.
Exactly. And that trance, it's kind of enabled by deep systemic failures, especially in politics.
Oh.
Well, history shows leaders have this tendency, right, to dismiss bearers of bad news or inconvenient truths. It's an old story.
Like Cassandra in Greek mythology or Jeremiah in the Bible.
Or even, the scientists behind the Global 2000 report back in 1980. They laid out stark warnings about population, resources, environment.
And what happened?
Politically sidelined, ignored in favor of a more optimistic, feel-good narrative about growth. It's easier to sell optimism than hard truths.
And this failure goes beyond just ignoring reports, doesn't it? It gets into basic economic assumptions.
It really does.
Yeah.
You often hear economists call climate change the largest market failure in history.
Right, I've heard that phrase.
But the sources we're looking at argue that framing is, well, misleading. Dangerously incomplete, even.
Why? What's wrong with calling it a market failure, isn't it?
It is, partly. But calling it just a market failure lets the deeper structures off the hook. It ignores the fact that even Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, had serious doubts about unalloyed self-interest.
Huh. I didn't know that about Smith.
Yeah, and it also glosses over the historical record. The sources mention the spotty and often shabby record of corporations and financial institutions even before the 2008 crash. This isn't just about getting the price wrong. It's about a deeper failure of accountability built into the whole system.
A structural failure. And in the U.S., that's maybe amplified by this deep suspicion of government, right?
Absolutely. There's this powerful anti-government tradition here. It's rooted in, wanting to escape the overbearing hand of government. We celebrate freedom from government, but that often means we turn a blind eye to the growing power of corporations. Which leads to this really interesting concept from political theorist Sheldon Wolin.
Which is
called it inverted totalitarianism.
Inverted totalitarianism. Okay, that sounds ominous. It's not like jackboots and dictators.
No, not at all. It's much more subtle. Wolin defined it as this sort of political coming of age of corporate power, happening at the same time as the political demobilization of ordinary citizens. People check out, feel powerless.
So what does that look like in practice for you, listening?
It looks like policy paralysis. It looks like a government that feels structurally unable to do the big things, like raise necessary taxes for a green transition, or fund the trillions needed for infrastructure repair, or mandate a rapid shift away from fossil fuels.
Why?
Because the whole political arena, the public square, is just dominated by corporate lobbying and interests. It basically hobbles the government's ability to act decisively on huge long-term problems like climate change.
And on top of that paralysis, the government's already juggling massive domestic issues.
Right. You've got decaying infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, needing trillions just for repairs.
Trillions?
They've got a national debt projected to hit, $45 trillion by the middle of the century.
Unbelievable.
And get this, we're often borrowing money, going deeper into debt, to pay for imported oil, sometimes from countries that are actively hostile to us. That money can even end up funding terrorism.
So we're financially drained, politically gridlocked. It makes responding to something as huge as climate change incredibly difficult.
Exactly. The government is effectively bankrupting itself and lacks the capital, let alone the political will, to fund the kind of response this long emergency requires.
Okay, let's shift from the systemic and political failures to something more tangible. The sources talk about a carbon connection.
Yeah, a way to connect the dots physically between exploiting one place and destroying another, even if they're far apart.
So where do we start?
Let's start in Appalachia, West Virginia, Kentucky. The heart of coal country, or what's left of it. We're talking about mountaintop removal mining.
Right. I've seen pictures. It looks brutal.
It is. The scale is hard to grasp. 500 mountains leveled, gone, across 1.5 million acres.
500 mountains.
And the rock and dirt they blast out, they call it overburden. Where does it go? It gets dumped into the valleys, burying something like 1,500 miles of streams permanently.
1,500 miles of stream is buried.
Gone forever, leading to just permanent ecological ruin, contaminated groundwater, and the cancer rates in some of these communities. They're described as off the charts.
There's one detail in the source material that just stopped me cold. Marsh Fork Elementary School.
Oh, Marsh Fork, yeah. It's almost unbelievable. The school sits right below this enormous impoundment, basically a lake, holding back billions of gallons of toxic coal slurry, the waste from washing coal.
And the evacuation plan.
The plan gives the kids and teachers 2 minutes to escape if that dam fails. 2 minutes before a potential 50-foot wall of black sludge hits them, moving at highway speeds.
2 minutes. It's horrifying. It lays bare the human cost right there.
The immediate, localized, unconscionable cost of this energy source. Now follow that carbon, travel nearly 1,000 miles south down to New Orleans and the Louisiana coast.
Okay, how are they connected?
For decades, the way we managed the lower Mississippi River, building levees, dredging channels, it starved the delta of the sediment it needs to replenish itself.
So the land is sinking, eroding away.
Exactly. And those coastal wetlands, they're the natural buffer against storms. Every 2.7 miles of marsh grass absorbs about a foot of storm surge. We've lost vast amounts of that buffer.
Making places like New Orleans incredibly vulnerable.
Critically vulnerable. And the simple, brutal link between devastated Appalachia and the sinking Louisiana coast is carbon.
Explain that link.
Every ton of coal that's ripped out of those Appalachian mountains using mountaintop removal, then burned in a power plant, it releases about 3.6 tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
3.6 tons of CO2 per ton of coal.
Yeah, and that CO2 traps heat, warms the oceans, fuels stronger hurricanes, raises sea levels, amplifying the very storms that threaten the now less protected coast.
And at the same time, the pollution from burning that coal causes premature deaths downwind from the power plants.
Absolutely. It connects the sacrifice zone directly to the disaster zone
Right.
and to public health impacts far away. It's all linked by carbon.
Which is why the sources are so harsh on the idea of clean coal.
They basically call it a scam, a dangerous fantasy. The only way you can make coal look remotely acceptable, they argue, is if you totally ignore its true costs.
What kind of costs?
All of them. The environmental destruction in places like Appalachia, the asthma, the heart disease, the deaths from air pollution, the massive future damages from climate change it locks in. And interestingly, even the civil liberties implications if we had to rely heavily on nuclear power as an alternative, which would require intense security.
So if you account for everything, coal just doesn't make sense.
Not even close,
Okay.
according to this analysis.
Okay, so the diagnosis is grim. An unmanageable crisis, deep systemic failures, paralyzed politics, devastating connections. Where do we go from here? What's the path forward?
The sources emphasize the need for what they call transformational leadership.
Transformational leadership. What does that mean in this context?
It draws on the work of James McGregor Burns. He defined it as leadership focused on consciousness raising on a wide plane. It's about changing how people think, their values, their awareness.
Not just policy tweaks, but changing minds and hearts.
Exactly. And it requires a blend of moral clarity and political smarts.
Are there historical examples?
The sources point to Abraham Lincoln and his approach to slavery. He was incredibly clear on the morality. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong, period.
Right, moral clarity.
But he was also politically shrewd. He framed it not just as a moral issue, but also as a constitutional one, building a political coalition. He refused to let it be reduced to just an economic debate, even though it clearly had huge economic dimensions.
So moral clarity plus political savvy. What about decisiveness, energy?
For that, the sources look to Franklin Roosevelt, specifically his famous first 100 days back in 1933, during the depths of the Great Depression.
What's the lesson there?
Well, the flurry of activity, the laws passed, the agencies created, they didn't instantly solve the Depression, but FDR's energy, his willingness to experiment pragmatically, his decisiveness, it was absolutely crucial for restoring public confidence. People started believing the government could act forcefully again.
And that kind of energy, that confidence in action is what's desperately needed now for climate.
Absolutely. And a key part of that is having a truly rational public conversation about our energy choices. We need to compare all the options on a level playing field.
Okay. The sources propose specific criteria for judging energy options, right?
Yes, 5 crucial criteria. And every potential solution, solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, efficiency, you name it, needs to be evaluated against all 5.
Let's list them. What's number 1?
Number 1 is pretty straightforward. Carbon eliminated per dollar spent, bang for your buck in terms of climate impacts.
Makes sense. Number 2.
Energy return on investment, often called EROI.
ERI. Why is that so important? It sounds a bit technical.
It's fundamental. EROI measures how much energy you get out of a source compared to the energy you have to put in to get it. Think about early oil wells versus, say, drilling in deep oceans or extracting from tar sands.
Right. It takes way more energy now to get the same barrel of oil.
Exactly. If the EROI of your society's main energy sources declines too much, your whole economy becomes less productive.
Yeah.
It takes more and more effort just to power itself. We need high EROI solutions to maintain complexity and well-being.
Okay, crucial. So carbon per dollar, EROI. What's number 3?
Speed of deployment.
Yeah.
How quickly can we actually build and scale up this solution? We don't have decades.
Right, urgency matters. Number 4.
Near-term technical feasibility. Does the technology actually work reliably now at scale, or is it still mostly theoretical or decades away?
We can't bet the planet on science fiction. Okay, and the last one, number 5.
Resilience. How well does the energy system hold up in the face of failure, whether that's accidents, natural disasters, or even deliberate attack or malice? Centralized, brittle systems are risky.
Carbon per dollar, EROI, speed, feasibility, and resilience. That's a really solid framework for cutting through the hype.
It forces an honest comparison.
Now, that focus on resilience connects to another big theme, the need for a psychological shift.
Yeah. This crisis demands we move past what one source calls an adolescent infatuation with dominating nature, with trying to reconstruct everything to suit our immediate desires.
An adolescent infatuation. That's quite a phrase. Where does that come from?
Well, Rabbi Abraham Heschel had a fascinating insight. He suggested that the root of our modern dissonance, our disconnection, is fundamentally ingratitude.
Ingratitude. How does that connect?
Think about it. Our society, particularly through advertising, bombards us constantly with messages designed to cultivate the exact opposite of gratitude.
That's true. Advertising works by making you feel like you lack something, that you need more, that you're entitled to it.
Precisely. The sources estimate we spend maybe $500 billion globally each year on advertising. It's essentially a massive industrial-scale machine for cultivating dissatisfaction, entitlement, and the desire, as they put it, to have as much as possible for doing as little as possible.
So the system is literally structured to make us ungrateful and always wanting more.
And that constant state of wanting, of ingratitude, makes it incredibly hard to generate authentic hope.
Ah, okay. So we need to distinguish hope from just optimism.
Yes, very clearly. The sources draw a sharp line. Optimism, they say, is easy. It doesn't have to work hard because it just kind of assumes things will turn out okay.
Right. She'll be right, as they say.
Yeah. But hope, authentic hope, is different. It has to be rooted in seeing the truth clearly, however difficult. And it requires immense courage, stamina, and actual work. It's an active state, not a passive feeling.
So this long emergency we're entering, it demands practical things like building resilience locally.
Definitely. Local food systems, decentralized renewable energy, stronger community networks, things like that.
But maybe even more fundamentally, it demands this change in our mindset, this shift from entitlement to gratitude, from optimism to active hope.
That seems to be the core argument. A fundamental change in our manner of thinking is required.
Which brings us to the final, really profound ethical challenge raised in the sources. It connects back to the founding of the U.S., surprisingly.
Yeah, it invokes James Madison and his arguments in the Federalist Papers about the danger of factions groups pursuing their own interests at the expense of the common good.
How does that apply here?
Well, think about it. From the perspective of future generations, isn't the present generation acting like the ultimate unchecked faction?
How so?
We, the people alive today, have the unprecedented power to inflict massive, irreversible, permanent damage on all subsequent generations through our actions, especially regarding the climate and environment. We hold the power to essentially tyrannize the future.
Tyrannize the future. Wow. We're a faction acting against posterity.
Exactly. And this raises a really tough final question, one for you, the listener, to really grapple with.
Okay, let's hear it.
Given that the U.S. Constitution, for example, only mentions posterity kind of vaguely in the preamble, and our current legal systems offer basically no standing, no real protection for unborn future generations against the harms we inflict today.
Right. They can't sue us from the future.
So the question is, how do we create the necessary legal and moral frameworks to actually protect the rights, the liberty, the property, the very lives of those future generations from the consequences of our choices right now?
It's like, we have words like genocide for crimes against groups across space. Do we need new words, new legal concepts to even describe this kind of intergenerational harm, this tyranny across time?
That's the challenge. What words must we invent? What frameworks must we build to confront this unique, unprecedented power we hold over the future?
A sobering question to end on. Thank you for that deep dive.